Bonjour, Véro taking you on another stroll in downtown Paris. Today I am in the famous Marais neighborhood, but in a very different section of the Marais known as the Haut Marais, the Upper Marais, in the 3rd Arrondissement. I am standing right outside a beautiful church. There's been a church here since the 17th century, but this one, the one you see here now, it's called Sainte-Croix, and it's a cathedral for the Armenian Catholic worshippers. And it was extensively remodeled in the mid-19th century by someone who's very well known in Paris because he's worked on a lot of the churches in town. He's worked on the famous former wholesale food market in Les Halles. His name was Victor Baltard. So we are standing on a peaceful Wednesday afternoon in the summer at the corner of several streets. I am standing in la Rue du Perche, and what I'd like to show you today in Le Marais is how Le Marais is a combination of the old and the new. It's a neighborhood where you can still see traces of the elegant years of this neighborhood back when the affluent people, the aristocracy in particular, built those beautiful private mansions known as hôtels particuliers. And you see what's left of the big one here in front of me called Hôtel de Retz. The gate remains. So these would be private mansions. You would have a big gate, a tall gate, and inside it there would be a courtyard, and a building would be there in a U shape. The gate was big enough that a horse and a carriage, horses and carriage could go through it. And if you walk in Le Marais, you will see a lot of these. Most people go and look for these in the 4th Arrondissement, which is south of us right now. But like I said, we are in the upper section of the neighborhood, in Le Haut Marais, the Upper Marais, which to some extent is the trendier part of the neighborhood. I was here a few days ago and I live streamed on a Sunday. There are a few tech issues. I wasn't happy with that walk, so I decided to come here, and was very thrilled when my brother, who works in downtown Paris, suggested meeting here, because I thought this is my opportunity to do this again. So we are at the corner of Rue Charlot and another street that's really popular in Le Haut Marais called the Rue De Brotana. A lot of art galleries will be here. Boutiques, of course, many boutiques in the Marais, and a tradition of workshops and craftsmanship that appeared in the 19th century. The Marais' heyday was in the 17th and 18th century, centered around the beautiful Place des Vosges, which you've all heard about, commissioned under a king named Henry IV, sorry, and his son, who came after, Louis XIII. But after the French Revolution, things changed drastically in the Marais, and by the 1960s, the neighborhood was really run down, and the French state had to step in to restore whole areas of Le Marais, whole sections of Le Marais, which was saved at the time. But through the 19th century, the working classes moved here. You could find des fabriques, factories, workshops, garages, and Le Haut Marais, where we are now, had a lot of these. So today these old fabriques and workshops have been replaced by trendy shops, boutiques selling high-end crafts, and so forth. It's 2:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, so lunch hour is wrapping up. It's also the end of July. A lot of Parisians have left town, and of course we have fewer tourists this year. We still have them though. So as an example of the pretty things you find in the neighborhood, now this big street ahead of us is called la Rue De Bretagne. And la Rue De Bretagne has been a lifeline in this neighborhood with beautiful real estate for a really long time. In fact, it was commissioned, just like la Place des Vosges, in the 17th century, very early 17th century, by the king I mentioned earlier, Henry IV, also known as le Vert Galant. Le Vert Galant, because he was a womanizer. You may have seen his statue at the tip of the Île de la Cité by the Place Dauphine in Paris. The reason people like to live in Le Haut Marais is that it retains this pleasant vibe with a lot of specialty shops, boulangerie, boucherie, where you can buy bread and meat and cheese. So you still have the feeling that you are in a real neighborhood. Of course, real estate prices put it out of reach of many people, but you can still come here and visit. We've just left la Rue de Saint-Onge, and now we are back on this big street I mentioned, la Rue de Bretagne. So a sign of gentrification in this neighborhood is all the high-end shops that you see here, from macarons to boulangeries, la Maison du Chocolat, the famous chocolatier, chocolate makers like Jacques Genin, and more. Many food tours are organized in this neighborhood, and that tells you something. People come here to sample the deliciousness that Paris can be. La Durée is on the right-hand side over there. You see it? Pretty boutiques, jewelry. Quite a few cavistes as well. Caviste, C-A-V-I-S-T-E, is a wine merchant. So we have quite a few cavistes in this neighborhood. And of course the famous Parisian terraces, which tend to be sprawling out more and more on sidewalks and even spill out into the street these days, since social distancing means the tables can't be as close to each other as they used to be. Across from us is le Café Charlot, a former boulangerie, which is one of the most popular cafes, restaurants. It really is a bistro in the area. The food is quite good. Of course, you will have hamburgers as well. Hard to find here is La Durée, if you like macaron. It's hard to find a restaurant in Paris that doesn't have hamburgers these days. But Café Charlot is a very popular place. Service is still quite nice. It's very nice actually, even for such a popular, trendy place. And it's not unusual here to meet French celebrities. Maison Véro is a very well-known and respected, bonjour, is a very well-known, respected charcutier. So they sell a lot of charcuterie, which is ham and cured meats. And they have several shops in Paris, but one of them is right here. And you would have a librairie, because in a real neighborhood you would have all this. You would have all these specialty shops. Now across the street from us is a very popular market called le Marché des Enfants Rouges, the market of the red children. It's been here since the early 17th century, and Thank you. I almost got run over. It's been here since the early 17th century, and it was named after an orphanage for children that was in the neighborhood for a couple of 100 years. And the market eventually was named after it, but it is the oldest operating covered market in Paris. So it's not that you have a lot of food stalls here, there are a few, but really people come here and hang out. It's a bit of a social place. You come here to eat, have lunch. It's open every day except Monday. So you can see the fruit stalls are closed. It could be that it is July or who knows why. L'Estaminet is a popular restaurant. It's not open today. You can see people eating outside everywhere right now. The weather is lovely. My favorite traiteur, deli, is this one. It says the couscous is here. And those guys are from Morocco or Tunisia. They make delightful couscous and tagine, that's stew from North Africa. And it's delicious. Bonjour monsieur, ça va et vous? C'est bien beau ce que vous avez. La semoule, the couscous, and all the desserts. He's a good salesperson right there. Half my family grew up in Algeria. They are pieds noirs, which is what you call the Europeans who lived in North Africa before those countries got their independence in the 1960s. So I grew up eating some of these pastries. It's wonderful. Since the gentleman is so kind, I will show you a little bit more here. And they are so good. And they serve it with hot mint tea. So don't hesitate. It is the Moroccan traiteur, traiteur marocain. Lovely people. So usually this place is quite happening. You see a few food stalls in there, and the plastic wrapping, the lovely plastic wrapping here is of course courtesy of our friend, the big bad virus. Here you have a fromagerie. So it's both a place where you can shop for food and then go home, and a place where you can eat. You can see those stools outside some of the shops, and so you can shop here and just stay here and have lunch or a glass of wine. Japanese food, Italian food. There's a little bit of everything for everyone here. So there are several entrances. This is the burger. I wanted to show you this stall, but it's closed. It's Alain Miam Miam, the most famous sandwich at the market. Le resto, merci, j'y vais, merci. Very nice. This gentleman reminded me that Alain Miam Miam also has a restaurant in the street there on the side, so I will go and make sure you see it, because if you ever come here and get discouraged by the long lines outside Alain Miam Miam and his famous sandwiches, you can always do what I'm doing, which is to go to the side exit of the market and then to go to his restaurant, which I believe is run by his sons, or at least one of his sons. So it's right here. See, if you exit the market on the side here, on Rue Charlot, C-H-A-R-L-O-T, you would be able to see the little restaurant I just mentioned, which is right here. See those people waiting here? And it says, Chez Alain Miam Miam. Miam Miam, M-I-A-M, is of course the expression in French for yum yum. And indeed, those sandwiches are yum yum. Rue Charlot has many beautiful doors like this one, many old buildings, like I said, dating back to the 17th, 18th century. It's a long street, so feel free to come and explore if you haven't yet.
But I literally, I sat on this.
So this is what a lot of restaurants are doing now. They build kind of a small deck that enables them to have tables sprawling out here at the same level as the curb. But this is actually the street. And they can do this when they make a request with the city of Paris. They can do this. They can set tables up out here. And they do. This is the new Paris, the land of the, or the city of the ever-sprawling terrace. Interesting real estate on the Rue De Brotana here. You can see this, there's Egyptian flavor on this building. So I've just done a little loop around the market, the Marché des Enfants Rouges, the market of red children. And we are now going to keep diving into the Haut Marais, the upper Marais. We're back at Café Charlot. You may remember I just mentioned this famous bistro in the area. La vie en terrasse. I love the decor inside. On the walls you have the famous metro tile. Ah, look at this. Vive l'été et le rosé. Long live summer and rosé wine. Le Repère de Bacchus is a chain, and they are wine merchants, as you may have guessed. I am now taking you to a street called La Rue de Picardie. Picardie is a region in northern France. And we are going to keep exploring this lovely area of the Marais known as the Haut Marais, the upper Marais in the 3rd arrondissement. So again, even though this is quite an old street, you have a mix of boutiques. Some of them are quite high-end. And other shops have been here, you can tell, for a really long time. Whether they're still here or not, they've kept the signs. This is cuir, which is leather. And this sign features civilian and military clothing. But right now, as you can see, the restaurant across the street has totally spread out on both sidewalks. And everybody's mostly okay with this because they're trying to help out businesses like cafes and restaurants. It's been a really challenging time for them. Many side streets, very peaceful side streets. And at the end of this side street, you see another one of those beautiful doors and gates, which was no doubt another hôtel particulier or private mansion. But what I want to show you here is this beautiful building known as le Carreau du Temple, C-A-R-R-E-A-U. It's all steel and glass. And it looks like a covered market because for a very long time it was. In fact, there's been a market here since the Middle Ages, and it's existed in very different versions. At some point in time there were some wood pavilions here, but it always specialized in clothing and fabric, always. But in the mid-19th century, like many other places in Paris, it was rehabilitated or remodeled. And these pavilions, 6 pavilions like this one, glass and steel, popped up. So today, after many years when the city didn't really know what to do with it, locals voted to keep it. And they have turned it into a center. So the main level here, the main floor with the very high ceilings and the glass ceiling, is used for exhibits, special events. I recently went to a brocante here, and underneath they excavated in 2014, and before they did a lot of work here, and so they excavated the basement and created a space where many associations are set up shop, and so now you can take all sorts of lessons here. Dancing classes, music classes, and so forth. So le carreau du temple really dominates this part of the neighborhood. Bonjour.
Pas dessus quand même.
Non, non. Now you hear construction sounds, and this has been Paris. I mean, this is always Paris anyway, but since the confinement ended several months ago, it's like life started again, and a lot of construction sites that had been put on hold have resumed, and so you see a lot of scaffolding on the side of buildings, and you hear a lot of construction sounds just about everywhere. This section, loud city. This section is a happening scene on the weekends. This is Branch Central. 10 or 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, the Parisians fell in love with the brunch ritual. Almost every restaurant seems to offer a brunch option on the weekends, on Sundays in particular. Here's a nice scene, very Parisian. On the left-hand side, you have the famous Colonne Marais, M-O-R-R-I-S, which was launched or created in the 19th century to advertise popular shows, and they still do. On the right-hand side over there, you see a fountain, a Wallace Fountain. We have quite a few of these in many neighborhoods. They were a gift to the city of Paris by an English philanthropist, Sir Wallace, who loved Paris and lived here and donated these fountains to the city of Paris. They're not just pretty, they were also very useful at a time when Parisians didn't really have access to water easily. Here's another view of the beautiful Carreau du Temple, the market we were just talking about, the former market. You can see it from the side now. So this is pure 19th century style with steel and glass. Very elegant architecture. And more of these restaurants. It would be a lot busier on a Sunday, but I kind of like it now. And of course, bikes. Everywhere you go in Paris these days, bikes, 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 as far as the eye can see. The mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, has pushed for more bikes. She's also pushed for more bike lanes, and is fighting against cars. That makes her equally popular and unpopular, depending on where you stand and what your main mode of transportation is in Paris. We are on a street called Rue du Petit Thouars. I will cross here so you can look back at the building one last time, this beautiful Carreau du Temple. And first I will show you the street sign. I know some of you like to follow our walks. There you go. Parisian pigeons taking a nap. So here is a really nice view of Le Carreau du Temple. There it is. The sun is facing me, but you can still see it. So picture 6 of these pavilions here in the mid-19th century, and eventually they were rehabilitated after having many ups and downs after the year 2000, and I believe it's reopened in 2014. And locals fought long and hard to keep it. So good for them. More restaurants, Parisian buildings. Still on the Rue du Petit Thouars. Outside a school that's been here for a really long time. This architecture is very interesting. The use of the brick dates it to the early 20th century, the first half of the 20th century. The brick, the ceramic accents as well. And you can tell it was or is still a school because of the motto Liberté, Égalité, and over there is the third one, Fraternité. And the coat of arms of the city of Paris, acknowledging the essential role of the Seine River and the city merchants as of the 14th century, the powerful city merchants. And the motto, which you can maybe guess, at the top of the ship it says Fluctuat nec mergitur, which is tossed by the waves but doesn't sink. Always in Paris, a lot of architectural details to look at, and you can really see what a neighborhood has been through just from looking at the buildings and the facades. Peek at a cute little square over there. So this section where the flags are is clearly a terrace, impromptu terrace that one of the restaurants has set up, but right now they're not using it. They're probably not serving lunch. They'll be open later for the apéro or aperitif time or happy hour in other parts of the world. So the school I just showed you today is called École du Perret on Rue du Petit Thouars. But talking about history, we need to point out, I mentioned the Carreau du Temple, T-E-M-P-L-E, temple. The word temple is everywhere in this neighborhood. You can see it in street names and on buildings. And the reason is, as shown in this old map, Le Temple was a compound, a very mighty compound, I should say, that stood here for about 200 years from the 12th through the 14th century. And this was the site of the Paris headquarters of a powerful religious military order known as the Knights Templars. They had their own hospital, their own cemetery, their own church. 4,000 people lived within the walls. There was only one entrance and a drawbridge. And we're pretty much standing here, including the building we just saw, that school, where we would be within that compound. Nothing much is left of it. The Knight Templars, who had gotten too powerful and too wealthy for the taste of a French king named Philippe le Bel, Philippe the Fair, met an untimely death or fate at the very beginning of the 14th century and disappeared. And after that, the compound had a very complicated history. It was taken down gradually. But during the French Revolution, a big tower remained. You can see it here. And the building in pink would be the city hall of the 3rd Arrondissement, which is nearby. And you see where it says La Tour, the tower. That tower was very, very high and had smaller towers around it. And during the French Revolution, this is where the king, Louis XVI, and his family were kept from the fall of 1792 after the monarchy fell, all the way to early 1793, when the king was sentenced to death and executed, at which point a few months later, Marie Antoinette, his wife, was taken to the conciergerie on the Île de la Cité, where she awaited her fate. She was executed in the fall of 1793. So this place played a very important part. L'Enclos du Temple was the name, enclos, as in compound. This place played a very important part of the history of Paris and France for more than 200 years and later too, during the Revolution and after. And we will talk about it a little bit later. The Knights Templars story is fascinating, and I encourage you to look it up. This is a school today. And again, we would have been inside that compound here. L'Enclos du Temple. Beautiful architecture along the way. More construction sounds. Indeed. More construction. Now, like I said earlier, the Marais' elegant years were during the 17th and 18th century, when a lot of people in the French aristocracy wanted to live here and in the 4th Arrondissement, where the Place des Vosges is located. But by the 19th century, things had changed drastically, and working classes moved in. This is la Cité du Petit Thouars. When you see the word cité in Paris, it doesn't mean a city. It means a development, usually a section of the town that was built for working classes. It will be humble buildings with a few floors, or it would be small houses that are really coveted today. But I love finding places like these in Paris, where you go back in the history of the city. This is a store that used to sell leather clothing. But look at the architecture. You can really see that these were old workshops. Some of them probably still are. A few publishing houses have moved in. But it's nice even when you are in a beautiful neighborhood like Le Marais with the beautiful doors and the hôtel particulier. It's nice to remember that there were different times in the same neighborhood and different social classes lived here. Bonjour, Véronique, Véro. And in case you haven't met me yet, I am a French girl who lived in the United States for more than 2 decades. That's why my blog is called French Girl in Seattle still. I relocated back to France in 2019. I am a tour guide, a Paris-based tour guide. Right now, there are no tours to lead for myself or for Rick Steves Europe. So I figured out a way of making a living by teaching French online. I used to be a French instructor for a while in Seattle. I am an adult educator. And instead of guiding in person, I like taking members of the France with Véro community who follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. I like to share information about Paris and France with them pretty much every day. So again, and I am right now in a dead-end street, a cité, a place that used to be a residence for, and a working place as well, for working classes in the 19th century. And today, I'm sure many people are interested in moving into some of these apartments. Here's a private courtyard. See, the workshops of yesterday are not all gone. We have a cabinet maker working here. it's a dead-end street, so I won't be able to go much farther. There we go. But you can kind of picture this place in the 19th century when people lived and worked here. And these are the best places you can find in Paris, off the beaten path. You sometimes find them. You sometimes find them as you're walking around. Look to the left, look to the right, and all of a sudden you see a little street and you investigate and you find an old working class neighborhood like this one, un passage or une cité. They can have different names, and it brings you back, takes you back in time. And as soon as I step back outside on la Rue du Petit Thouars, at the end of this dead-end street, I will be back again in 21st century Paris, in a gentrified area, a very elegant village known as le Haut Marais. It's kind of fabulous that you can do that with just a few streets. Step away from the construction if we can. It is a pretty hot day. I would say it's about 25 Celsius today. Lovely real estate. This is late 19th century. You can tell from the dome over there. I am taking you to this church you see ahead of us, Saint Elizabeth of Hungary. The church was built between the 17th and the 19th century, and it was commissioned by a Queen of France known as Marais de Medici. She had married Henry IV, the king we talked about earlier, and was the mother of a French king known as Louis XIII. It's an interesting church because on Sunday afternoons there is a really large Chinese community in this area, and on Sunday afternoons they always have a mass in Mandarin. I was here recently on a Sunday and saw many Chinese people coming out of the church. It's very pretty inside. But I am hoping to show you something. I hope it's there. If not, too bad. I don't think I can access it today. It's a painting that shows you King Louis XVI and his family, Marie Antoinette and their two children and his sister, Madame Elisabeth. He was saying goodbye to them before they took him away and he was executed. So if you come back to this church, make sure you see that. Well, at least you got a peek of you had a chance to look at the inside of the church. A lot of jewelries in this neighborhood, goldsmiths, and this has been a tradition ever since the Middle Ages. The Knights Templars, as I was saying, were very wealthy, very powerful, and so a lot of goldsmiths settled down in this area early on, and today you still see jewelry shops. You see across the street it says Gold Time, Flora d'Or. Or means gold. And all along the street, known as la Rue du Temple, the street of the temple. Again, another street named after the Knights Templars and their famous compound. They're still there, those jewelry shops, except a lot of them are wholesale. So don't get too excited. On the side of one of these buildings is a beautiful sundial, which is really hard to see in the summer because the trees have grown, but I will try and give you a little peek at it. It won an award in the 19th century, and it's always nice to look at the details on the facades of buildings in Paris. You see the name of the architects who worked on this building on the right-hand side. We are on la Rue Perret. And if I get a little closer, you will be able to see the incredible detail on the side of this building. And at the top, right under that intricate carving, stands the sundial. I think you see it a lot better in the winter when you can step back and the trees don't stand in your way. So make sure to come back when you can. Take a look at it. We are going to wrap up our walk right outside a very popular square. That's what we call public gardens in Paris, the ones located in most neighborhoods. As you know, in the mid-19th century, during the Second Empire, Napoleon III and his wingman, Baron Haussmann, and their team turned Paris into a big modern city. One of the things they did was to create beautiful parks and gardens. Some were created from scratch, often in the very romantic style that Napoleon III loved because he had lived in exile in England and loved London. And this is one of the small squares or public gardens. It's called the Square du Temple. So again, this is named after the Knights Templars compound. You can see Parisians relaxing early afternoon in the heat. Now on Sunday, I took my club members in here. We had a really nice little chat about travel, what it's like to travel in France this summer, as we observed Parisians at play inside the garden. I do many things with my club members, and if you would like to get information about how to join the France with Véro club, I will put some information in the video notes, but know that for as little as the price of a glass of wine a month, you can become a France with Véro member, which means in return for your help, because this is my job and I rely on club members to help me create content as I travel around Paris and France. In return for your help, you will be receiving many rewards in the shape of blog posts, photos, exclusive videos, and a lot of live events like the one I had here on Sunday with my club members. I actually sat right under this beautiful gazebo you see in the background, built in 1900, and they got to sit there with me for over 30 minutes as we had a really nice chat and discussed summer in Paris and traveling in France. So look me up Membership does have its privileges. I continue sharing information every day in social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, under Friends with Véro. And there are many videos, guided walks I publish on my YouTube channel for you to watch. This one will be there too in a few hours. We are back on the bustling Rue De Brotana. So we walked in a big loop. This is Le Sancerre, a wonderful restaurant, cafe, where I just enjoyed lunch with my brother, with a glass of Sancerre, of course. Last peek at the Square du Temple. And I will wrap up right outside this beautiful building, which is the City Hall, La Mairie, the City Hall of the 3rd Arrondissement. And in fact, the tower where Louis XVI and his family were kept kind of sat between this building and the beautiful garden on the left. And you can see markings on the ground, they show you where it was. Quite a grandiose building for a city hall, with the French motto above the door, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. I want to thank you very much for joining me today on this walk around Le Haut Marais, the Upper Marais. And make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. I'll be publishing quite a few more throughout the summer as I make my way to southern France through Bordeaux and other beautiful places in the next few days. Merci, à bientôt!